He found his maid freezing in the snow during Christmas dinner. The billionaire exploded with rage when he learned why. The Montgomery estate stood like a crown jewel against the winter sky, its Georgian columns wrapped in evergreen garlands and twinkling lights that could be seen from miles away. Snow fell in thick, lazy flakes on Christmas Eve, blanketing the vast Connecticut grounds in pristine white. Inside the grand ballroom, 70 of New York's elite clinked crystal glasses filled with Dom Perignon, their designer gowns and tailored tuxedos a sea of wealth and privilege. William Montgomery moved through the crowd with the ease of a man born to this world, yet never quite comfortable in it. At 32, he built his tech empire from a dorm room idea into a billion-dollar reality, but nights like these, full of pretense and performance, still felt like wearing someone else's skin. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his Tom Ford tuxedo impeccable, but his gray eyes held a distance, a guardedness that came from learning too young that people wanted his money more than they wanted him. "Darling, there you are." Alara Whitmore glided toward him, her emerald silk gown hugging curves that had graced magazine covers. At 30, she was the embodiment of old money elegance, boarding school polish, a trust fund older than most countries, and connections that opened every door in Manhattan. Her auburn hair was swept into an elaborate updo, diamonds dripping from her throat and ears. Senator Blackwell was just asking about our wedding plans. "June at the plaza," I told him. "Nothing but the best." William forced a smile, accepting her kiss on his cheek. "Of course. Whatever you'd like, Alara." She squeezed his arm, her perfectly manicured nails pressing just slightly too hard. "You're too generous. Though I must say, tonight has been absolutely perfect. The caterers outdid themselves, and the decorations are divine." Before William could respond, Thomas Ashford pulled him aside to discuss a potential investment. William excused himself, diving into the familiar territory of business talk, profit margins, market trends, things that made sense in a world that often didn't. Meanwhile, Alara drifted toward the grand staircase where her inner circle had gathered, women who lunched at Le Bernardin and summered in the Hamptons, who measured worth in heritage and appearance. "Alara, darling, this party is magnificent," Victoria Sterling gushed, her champagne glass catching the chandelier light. "You've truly outdone yourself," Caroline Vanderbilt added. Alara's smile turned sharp, satisfied. The champagne had loosened her tongue, and the validation from her friends was intoxicating. "Well, I'd have to make some improvements to William's household first. You wouldn't believe what I discovered." The women leaned in, eyes bright with gossip hunger. 3 months ago, I found he'd hired this maid." Alara's voice dripped with disdain. "Mariana something. 27, Brazilian, and absolutely stunning. The kind of natural beauty that doesn't even try, no makeup needed, perfect skin, those enormous dark eyes. It made me sick." "How inappropriate," Victoria murmured. "So I got rid of her," Alara said simply, taking another sip of champagne. "Threw her out this afternoon, actually. On Christmas Eve, yes, but she needed to understand her place." Nearby, partially hidden behind a marble column, William had been heading to the kitchen to thank the catering staff when Alara's voice had stopped him cold. Now he stood frozen, his blood turning to ice as he heard his fiancé's cruel words. "You should have seen her face when I told her to leave," Alara laughed. "All those tears." She just packed her pathetic little suitcase and walked out into the snow. "Some people are born to serve. They don't have the spine to fight back." William's hands clenched into fists. Mariana. Sweet, quiet Mariana who always had a gentle smile, who worked harder than anyone, who'd been nothing but kind and professional for 2 years.
Gone.
Thrown out into a blizzard. Because his fiancée was jealous. The fury that exploded through William's chest was unlike anything he'd ever felt. Without thinking, he strode out from behind the column, his face like thunder. "Alara." His voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. Conversations died. Heads turned. Alara's smile froze. "William, darling. Where's Mariana?" Each word was ice-cold, controlled rage. The color drained from Alara's face. "I don't know what you..." I heard every word you just said. William's gray eyes were steel.
Where is she?
Alara's mask shattered. She's gone. I sent her away. She was inappropriate. The only thing inappropriate here is you. William's voice was deadly quiet now, more terrifying than if he'd shouted. You threw someone out into a snowstorm on Christmas Eve because you were threatened by her kindness. William, you're making a scene? I don't care. He turned to his butler, who stood nearby, eyes wide. Get me Mariana Santos's file. Her emergency contact information.
Now.
Yes, sir. William looked back at Alara, and what she saw in his face made her step backward. The engagement is over. I want you out of my house. Tonight. You can't be serious. I have never been more serious in my life. He was already moving toward the exit, grabbing his coat. Someone I was responsible for is out there in 12-degree weather because of your cruelty. And you're worried about a scene? He didn't wait for her response. The party, the guests, his reputation. None of it mattered. All that mattered was finding Mariana before it was too late. The cold hit William like a physical assault when he burst through the front doors. The temperature had dropped to 12 degrees, and the snow was falling so thick he could barely see 20 feet ahead. Wind howled across the estate grounds, turning the gentle Christmas Eve snowfall into a near whiteout. His Range Rover sat in the circular drive, already buried under several inches of snow. William scraped frantically at the windshield with his bare hands. He'd forgotten gloves in his desperation, while the engine roared to life. His butler appeared at his side, paper fluttering in the wind. Sir, the roads are dangerous. I don't care about the roads. William snatched the paper. His eyes scanned Mariana's employment file. She'd listed the staff quarters as her residence. No local address because she'd lived on the estate. An emergency contact in Brazil, her mother, Maria Santos. No place to go. No one to call. Did anyone see her leave? A cab? Uber? The butler shook his head miserably.
No, sir. I didn't even know she'd been dismissed.
With the party preparations. Call every taxi company, every ride service in the area. See if anyone picked up a fare from here this afternoon. William was already climbing into the SUV. And make sure that woman is gone by the time I return. He didn't need to specify which woman. The drive down his own driveway was treacherous. 3 miles to the main road, to the bus stop where Mariana would have headed. 3 miles that in this weather, on foot, carrying luggage, would have taken over an hour. William's mind raced with terrible mathematics. If Alara had thrown her out around 5:30 or 6 p.m., she could have been out here for 3 hours. 3 hours in 12-degree weather with wind chill, making it feel like below zero. His headlights carved weak tunnels through the swirling snow. Every few seconds, he had to lean forward and wipe condensation from the windshield just to see. The SUV fishtailed on ice, and he forced himself to slow down. He couldn't help Mariana if he crashed. But every second felt like an eternity. His mind conjured images he couldn't bear. Mariana collapsed in a snowdrift, her lips blue with cold, those gentle dark eyes closed forever. Why hadn't he noticed her more? Why hadn't he seen what Alara was doing? He thought back over the past 3 months. Had Mariana seemed different? Sadder? More withdrawn? The truth slammed into him with the force of a freight train. He'd barely noticed her at all. She'd been like a ghost in his own home, silent and efficient, and he'd taken her completely for granted. For 2 years, she'd been part of his household. 2 years of quiet service, of small kindnesses he'd barely acknowledged. He remembered now fresh flowers that would appear in his study when he'd had a particularly difficult day. His favorite coffee waiting for him, prepared exactly right. The way she'd gently coax Mrs. Chun, the elderly head housekeeper, into sitting down when her arthritis flared. Mariana had made his house feel like a home, and he'd never even thanked her properly. The main road was recently plowed, but still treacherous. William's hands gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. The bus stop was at the intersection of Route 7 and Maple Road, a lonely shelter on the edge of nowhere. When he finally reached it, his heart sank into his stomach. The bus shelter stood empty. Just a small plexiglass structure with a bench, everything covered in snow, dark and abandoned. The snow around it was undisturbed except by wind patterns, no footprints, no sign anyone had been there recently. William threw the SUV into park and jumped out. Mariana. The wind snatched his voice away. Mariana. Nothing but the howl of the storm and the whisper of snow against his face. She wasn't here. Either the bus had come, but when, or she'd never made it this far. That second possibility sent terror through his veins. William jumped back into the Range Rover and began crawling back toward the estate, his eyes scanning both sides of the road with desperate intensity. The snow was getting deeper by the minute, the visibility worse. If she'd tried to walk in this, if she'd gotten disoriented, if she'd slipped. Please, he whispered to no one. To God. To the universe. Please let her be okay. He'd driven maybe half a mile when his headlights caught something dark against the endless white. A shape, off to the side of the road, partially hidden by a snowdrift near a cluster of oak trees. William slammed on the brakes. The SUV skidded, fishtailed, but stopped. He was out of the vehicle before the engine fully cut, stumbling through knee-deep snow that burned his legs through his tuxedo pants. The dark shape was a suitcase. Old, battered, half buried in snow. And a few feet away, crumpled against the base of an oak tree like a discarded doll, was Mariana.
No.
No, no, no. William fell to his knees beside her, snow soaking through his expensive clothes. She was curled on her side, her thin coat, too thin for this weather, dusted white with snow. Her long dark hair was plastered to her pale face, and her lips had a blue tinge that made his heart stop. Mariana. Mariana, can you hear me? His hands shook as he reached for her neck, searching desperately for a pulse. Nothing. His own heart seemed to stop. Then there. A faint, so faint he almost missed it, but there. A pulse. Slow, too slow, but she was alive.
Barely.
Okay. Okay, I've got you. William stripped off his tuxedo jacket and wrapped it around her, then carefully, so carefully, lifted her into his arms. She was terrifyingly light, almost weightless. Her head lolled against his shoulder, and up close he could see her face was deathly pale, her breathing so shallow he had to watch closely to see her chest move. How long had she been out here? An hour?
2?
He carried her to the Range Rover, his dress shoes slipping on ice, his arms trembling not from her weight but from fear and adrenaline. He laid her across the back seat as gently as he could and cranked the heat to maximum. His phone was in his hand before he consciously decided to grab it. 911. What's your emergency? I found someone in the snow. Female, 27, hypothermic. She's unconscious, barely breathing. I'm on Route 7, about 2 miles south of the Montgomery estate. I'm bringing her to Millbrook General now. Sir, in this weather, you should wait for an ambulance. I'm not waiting. I'll be there in 10 minutes. William ended the call, threw the SUV into drive, and pressed the accelerator. As he drove, he kept talking to Mariana's still form in the back seat, his voice cracking with emotion he couldn't control. Stay with me, Mariana.
Please stay with me. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry.
I should have seen what was happening. Should have protected you. Just stay with me.
Please.
Please don't leave. Her eyes remained closed, her face peaceful in a way that terrified him. And William Montgomery, who'd built an empire on calculated decisions and emotional distance, had never felt more helpless in his entire life. The emergency room at Millbrook General Hospital was a harsh assault of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell. William burst through the automatic doors carrying Mariana, her head lolling against his shoulder, melting snow dripping from both of them onto the linoleum floor. I need help. Hypothermia. I found her in the snow. She's barely breathing. The transformation was instantaneous. A team of nurses and a young doctor materialized around him, hands reaching for Mariana, voices calm but urgent as they transferred her onto a waiting gurney. How long was she exposed? I don't know. Maybe 2 hours, maybe more. Core temperature? Pulse is weak and thready. William tried to follow as they wheeled her away, but a nurse, a kind-faced woman in her 50s with tired eyes, placed a firm hand on his chest. "Sir, you need to let us work. Are you family?" The question stopped him cold. Family?
No.
He was her employer. The man who'd been too blind to see she was suffering. The man who'd let his fiancée torture her for months without noticing. "I'm responsible for her," he managed, his voice hoarse. "I'm the reason she was out there." The nurse's expression softened with understanding. "We'll do everything we can. I need you to fill out some paperwork. Do you know her name? Medical history?" Mariana Santos. 27 years old. Brazilian. She might have a language barrier when she wakes up. "I don't," his voice cracked. "God, I don't know her medical history. She worked for me for 2 years, and I don't know anything about her." "It's okay. We'll figure it out." The nurse guided him toward a plastic chair in the waiting room. "This is going to take a while. Why don't you have a seat?" The waiting room was decorated for Christmas in a way that felt obscene given the circumstances. A slightly crooked tree in the corner, garlands strung along the reception desk, a TV playing It's a Wonderful Life with the sound off. William collapsed into a chair, his ruined tuxedo leaving puddles on the floor. Time became meaningless. He watched the clock. 8:47 p.m., 9:15 p.m., 9:43 p.m., but the minutes felt like hours. Other families came and went. A child with a broken arm, crying into his mother's shoulder. An elderly man clutching his chest while his wife held his hand. A teenager from a car accident, his friends hovering anxiously nearby. Each time the emergency department doors swung open, William looked up, hoping for news. Each time it wasn't for him. His phone buzzed incessantly. He ignored it until finally checking 17 missed calls, 32 text messages. His mother, his business partner, his lawyer, society friends wondering what had happened at the party. One message from his butler. "The woman has been removed from the premises. Her belongings will be shipped tomorrow. All guests have departed. Awaiting your instructions, sir." The woman. Not even Alara anymore. Just the woman.
Good.
William typed back. "Have legal draw up a statement ending the engagement effective immediately. No contact, no exceptions. And make sure every member of the household staff knows Mariana's dismissal was unauthorized. She has a job here, for as long as she wants it." Another buzz. His mother. "William, what on earth is going on? Alara called me in tears. This is humiliating for our family." He stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, "A woman nearly died because of Alara's cruelty. If you're more worried about humiliation than someone's life, then I don't know what to say to you." He turned off his phone. At 10:23 p.m., a different nurse brought him coffee and a blanket. "You look like you're freezing." William hadn't realized he was shivering. His tuxedo was still damp, his dress shoes soaked through. He accepted the coffee gratefully. "Is there any news?" "The doctor will be out soon. She's stable. That's all I can tell you right now." Stable. The word echoed in William's head. Stable meant alive. Stable meant there was hope. He wrapped the thin hospital blanket around his shoulders and tried not to think about what he'd do if Mariana didn't make it. Tried not to think about how he'd live with himself knowing he'd been so blind, so careless with someone's well-being. At 11:47 p.m., the young doctor finally emerged. He looked exhausted, his scrubs rumpled, but there was something cautiously optimistic in his expression. "Mr. Montgomery?" William shot to his feet, the blanket falling to the floor. "How is she?" "Alive, which honestly is remarkable. Her core body temperature was 89 degrees when she arrived, severe hypothermia. Another 30 minutes and we'd be having a very different conversation." The doctor ran a hand through his hair. "We've been warming her slowly. She's conscious now, though disoriented and very weak." The relief was so intense William had to sit back down. "Can I see her?" The doctor hesitated. "She's asking not to see anyone. She seems frightened, confused. She keeps apologizing, saying she needs to leave, that she's caused too much trouble." Of course she was. Because Alara had spent months making her feel worthless, expendable. because she'd been thrown out like garbage on Christmas Eve. "Please," William said, and he didn't care that he was begging. "Please let me see her. I need to explain. I need her to know what happened wasn't her fault." Something in his face must have convinced the doctor. 5 minutes. And if she asks you to leave, you leave immediately. Understood? Understood. The room they led him to was small, separated from the main emergency area by a curtain. Mariana lay in the narrow bed, covered in heated blankets, and 4 in her arm. Her long dark hair was loose around her shoulders. Without the careful bun she always wore for work, she looked younger, more vulnerable. When she saw William in the doorway, her eyes went wide with panic. She tried to sit up. "Mr. Montgomery, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cause problems. I'll leave right away." "Mariana, no." William held up his hands, staying near the door. "You're not in trouble. You don't need to apologize. Please." She stared at him, confusion clouding her dark eyes. "But Miss Whitmore said, she told me I was." "I know what she told you. I know what she did." William took a careful step closer. "I heard her tonight at the party, bragging to her friends about throwing you out. Mariana, I had no idea. I should have known, should have noticed, but I didn't, and I am so sorry." Tears began sliding down Mariana's cheeks. "You don't have to apologize to me. I'm nobody. I'm just—" "Don't say that." The fierceness in William's voice made her stop. "Don't ever say that. You nearly died tonight because of cruelty and jealousy and my blindness. You deserved better. You deserve better." "I should have been stronger," she whispered, her hands twisting in the blankets. "Should have asked for help. But I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Mariana looked down, her voice dropping so low he could barely hear it. "Afraid of men. Of trusting them. Of getting close to anyone." The words came slowly, painfully. "My father hurt my mother for years. Beat her until she couldn't stand. I watched it happen, watched her suffer until she finally escaped and brought us to America. I promised myself I would never let a man close enough to hurt me like that. Never be weak like she was." The revelation hit William like a punch to the chest. All those times he'd noticed her flinching when someone moved too quickly. The careful distance she maintained. The sadness that lived behind her eyes. "You're not weak," he said softly. "Surviving what you've survived, that takes incredible strength. But I let Miss Whitmore make me feel small. Let her chase me away without fighting back. She had all the power in that situation. You did what you had to do to survive. There's no shame in that." Mariana's tears fell faster. "Why are you here? Why did you come looking for me?" William moved closer, slowly, letting her track his movements. "Because the moment I heard you were out in that storm, nothing else mattered. Not the party, not my reputation, not anything. All I could think was that I had to find you, had to make sure you were safe. But I'm just a maid. You're Mariana Santos. You're someone who sends money to her sick mother every month even when you can barely afford to eat. Someone who stays late to help the other staff. Someone who survived hypothermia because you're stronger than you know." He stopped a respectful distance from her bed. "And you're someone I'd very much like to know better. If you'll let me." The hospital kept Mariana overnight for observation. William refused to leave despite the nurse's gentle suggestions that he should go home and rest. He stationed himself in a chair in the hallway outside her room, still wearing his ruined tuxedo, his hair sticking up from running his hands through it too many times. Around 3 a.m., the kind-faced nurse who'd helped him earlier brought fresh coffee and a sandwich. "You need to eat something, Mr. Montgomery." "I can't. Not until I know she's okay." But he accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping his hands around the warm cup. The nurse settled into the chair beside him with a sigh. "I've been doing this job for 32 years. Want to know what I've learned?" William nodded, too exhausted to speak. "The measure of a person isn't in avoiding mistakes. We all make those. It's in what we do after we realize we've made them. You could have stayed at your fancy party. Could have sent someone else to find her. But you didn't." She patted his knee. "That says something about who you are." After she left, William sat in the quiet hallway and thought about his life. The empire he'd built, the money he'd accumulated, the respect he commanded in boardrooms across the country. None of it had prepared him for the simple, devastating truth that he'd been living wrong. Not wrong in obvious ways. He'd never broken laws or deliberately hurt people. But he'd been asleep to the smaller truths, the human ones. He'd built walls of wealth and work so high that he couldn't see the suffering happening in his own home. Mariana had been there for 2 years. 2 years. And what did he really know about her? That she made excellent coffee. That she was efficient and quiet. That somehow she always knew when he'd had a difficult day and would leave small gestures of kindness, fresh flowers in his study, his favorite cookies on his desk. He'd never asked why she'd come to America, what her dreams were, if she was happy. He'd never asked anything at all. The sun was rising, painting the hallway in shades of pink and gold, when the doctor made his morning rounds. "She's awake," he told William. "And she's asking for you." This time, when William entered the room, Mariana didn't look panicked. She looked fragile but resolute, sitting up in bed with her hands folded in her lap. "Mr. Montgomery." "William." "Please, just William." She ducked her head. "William, I've been thinking all night about what you said, about Miss Whitmore. I need you to know, nothing ever happened between us.
I never looked at you that way.
I never even." She stopped, her cheeks flushing. "That's not true. I thought about it.
Of course I thought about it.
But I never acted on it. Never would have. You were engaged, and you were my employer, and I knew my place." "Your place," William repeated softly, pulling the chair closer to her bed but maintaining respectful distance, "should have been as a valued member of my household, as someone treated with dignity and respect. I need to find somewhere else to go. A new job. I can't come back to the estate. It wouldn't be appropriate." "Why not?" She looked up at him, confusion in her eyes. "Because of everything that happened. Because everyone will talk. Because—" "Let them talk." William leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Mariana, I'm not asking you to come back as my maid. I'm asking if you'll give me a chance to know you.
The real you.
Not as my employee. As a person." Her eyes widened. "I don't understand. Neither do I, fully. But I know that when I thought you might die, something inside me broke open. All these walls I've built, all this distance I've maintained, it felt stupid and pointless. Life is too short to spend it hiding." He met her gaze. "I'm not asking for anything from you. I know you're afraid of getting close to people, especially men. I'm not asking for trust or feelings you don't have. I'm just asking for a chance to be your friend. To actually see you this time." Mariana was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know how to do that. After everything with my father, after watching my mother suffer, I promised myself I'd never be vulnerable. Never let anyone close enough to hurt me. I understand. And I'm not asking you to change that. I'm just asking if we can start small.
Coffee sometime.
Conversation. Getting to know each other like normal people." A small smile touched his lips. "Fair warning though, I'm terrible at small talk. I mostly think about algorithms and market analysis. I'll probably bore you." That surprised a laugh out of her, soft and musical. It was the first time William had ever heard her laugh, and the sound made something in his chest tighten. "You want to have coffee with me? A maid. A person who helped me see the truth about my life. Someone who reminds me that there's more to living than balance sheets and board meetings." William stood, not wanting to overwhelm her. "I'm going to go home, shower, sleep for a few hours. The doctor says you'll be released this afternoon. I'll make sure you have somewhere safe to stay, no strings attached, no expectations. Just somewhere warm where you can rest and figure out what you want to do next." "William." Her voice stopped him at the door. "Why are you being so kind to me?" He turned back, and the truth surprised even himself. "Because when I carried you out of that snow, when I thought I might lose you before I ever really knew you, I realized I've been sleepwalking through my life. Going through motions, checking boxes, building an empire, but forgetting to build a life worth living." He paused. "You reminded me what actually matters. That kindness matters. That seeing people, really seeing them, matters." Tears welled in Mariana's eyes. I'm not special. I'm just. If you say nobody again, I'm calling the doctor to check for head trauma. His tone was light, teasing. You're Mariana Santos. You're someone strong enough to survive what you've survived. Someone kind enough to care for others even when you're suffering. Someone I'd very much like to know better. If you'll let me. She nodded slowly, a tentative smile appearing. Coffee sounds nice. Good. It's a date. Well, not a date.
Just coffee.
Between potential friends. William fumbled over the words, suddenly awkward. I'm going to stop talking before I make this worse. Mariana's smile grew. I think I like you fumbling. It makes you seem more human. At the estate, you always seemed so perfect. Untouchable. I'm far from perfect. But I'm going to try to be better. Starting now. 3 weeks later, William sat in a small cafe in Millbrook, a world away from the country clubs and Michelin-starred restaurants he usually frequented. The place was crowded with locals, the air thick with the smell of fresh bread and coffee. He'd arrived 20 minutes early, too eager, but he couldn't help it. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind. The story of his broken engagement had hit the society pages with predictable fury. Alara had tried to control the narrative, painting herself as the wronged party, but too many guests had been at that Christmas party. Too many had heard her cruel words about Mariana. The truth had a way of coming out. His mother had called, horrified by the scandal. His business partners had expressed concern about his judgment. His social circle had buzzed with gossip and speculation. And William had discovered something liberating. He didn't care. Let them talk. Let them judge. For the first time in his life, he was making decisions based on what felt right rather than what looked right. He'd set Mariana up in a modest apartment in town, paid for 6 months in advance before she could protest. Not at the estate. She'd been firm about needing independence. But somewhere safe and warm where she could heal and decide her next steps. He'd also quietly paid off her mother's medical bills in Brazil, routing the payment through an international medical charity so Mariana wouldn't know it came from him. They'd had coffee twice since she'd been released from the hospital. Careful, polite conversations where they'd both been cautious, dancing around the elephant in the room. The fact that something had shifted between them that night in the snow, something neither quite knew how to name. When Mariana walked through the cafe door, her cheeks pink from the January cold, wrapped in a new wool coat, a gift from Mrs. Chun and the other estate staff who'd been horrified to learn what happened, William felt his heart stutter. She was beautiful. Yes, that hadn't changed. But now he saw beyond the beauty to the person beneath. The strength it had taken to leave an abusive home. The courage of starting over in a new country. The kindness that made her send most of her paycheck to her sick mother while living on almost nothing. I'm sorry I'm late, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. The bus was delayed. You're not late. I was early. William poured coffee from the pot he'd ordered. How are you feeling? Better. Stronger. She wrapped her hands around the mug. He'd learned this was her habit when nervous. I've been thinking about what to do next. I have some savings and I've been looking at community college programs. Maybe business management, or... She stopped, looking embarrassed. Listen to me, making plans like I have options. You have every option in the world. You're smart, hardworking, capable of anything you set your mind to. William leaned forward. But have you thought about what you'd really want to do? Not what's practical, but what would make you happy. Mariana was quiet, her eyes distant. When I was little, before everything got bad with my father, I used to help my mother plan parties. She worked for wealthy families in Sao Paulo, and sometimes I'd go with her. I loved choosing flowers, arranging tables, making spaces beautiful. I used to dream of being an event planner. She laughed softly, sadly. Foolish, right? A maid dreaming of planning parties instead of serving at them. It's not foolish at all. William's mind was already racing. What if he did it? Became an event planner. Started your own business. William, that takes money. Connections. Things I don't have. But I do. And before you protest, hear me out. Not a gift. Not charity. A business investment. You have the talent and vision. I have the capital and connections. We'd be partners. You handle the creative side, the client relationships, the actual planning. I handle the business infrastructure, the financing, the networking. 50-50 split. You want to go into business with me? A maid you barely know. I want to go into business with someone who has an incredible eye for beauty, a gift for making people feel cared for, and more resilience than anyone I've ever met. Someone I'm getting to know better every day.
He paused.
Someone who constantly surprises me with her strength and grace. Mariana's hands trembled around her coffee mug. I don't understand you, William Montgomery. You could have anyone do anything. Why are you here with me? Why do you care? William set down his mug, his gray eyes meeting hers directly. Do you want the truth? The real truth? She nodded, wariness and hope warring in her expression. When I carried you out of that snow, when I thought I might lose you before I ever really knew you, something changed in me. I realized I'd been living half a life, going through motions, checking boxes, building an empire, but forgetting to build something worth living for. He took a breath. I'm not asking you to feel anything you don't feel. I know you're still healing, still learning to trust. But I want you to know that I see you, Mariana. Your strength and your kindness and your beauty, inside and out. And I think you might see me too, the real me. Not the billionaire or the CEO. Just William. Tears gleamed in Mariana's eyes. I do see you. That's what scares me. I've spent so long protecting myself, keeping everyone at a distance. But with you, when you were talking to me in the car that night, even though I couldn't respond, I heard you. Heard the panic in your voice, the care. And I thought maybe not all men are like my father. Maybe it's possible to trust again. It is possible. But it takes time, and we have time. William reached across the table, his hand palm up on the scarred wood. An invitation, not a demand. What do you say? Want to take a chance? On a business partnership? On friendship? On seeing where this goes? Mariana stared at his hand for a long moment. William could see the war in her expression. Fear versus hope, caution versus courage. Finally, slowly, she reached out and placed her hand in his. Her fingers were small and delicate, but her grip was firm. Okay, she whispered.
Okay.
Let's try. William's smile was brighter than the winter sun streaming through the cafe windows. Thank you. For giving me a chance. For being brave enough to trust. Thank you, Mariana said, her own smile growing. For seeing me. For making me believe I'm worth seeing. They sat like that, hands clasped across the table, while around them the cafe bustled with morning life. Outside, fresh snow began to fall, but this time it looked beautiful instead of threatening. This time it looked like promise instead of danger. This time it looked like the beginning of something new. 6 months later, the grand ballroom of the Montgomery estate had been transformed. Where there had once been cold formality, there was now warmth and vibrant life. Mariana stood at the center of it all, directing her team with confident grace as they put the finishing touches on the wedding setup. Not her wedding. She and William were taking things slowly, both still learning to trust, to be vulnerable. But this wedding, for William's cousin, had become the launching event for Santos Events, Mariana's new company. The centerpieces need to be 2 inches higher. Yes, perfect. And can we adjust the lighting? I want it warmer, more golden. Mariana consulted her tablet, checking off items with practiced efficiency. 6 months of intensive work, of long hours learning the business side while honing her natural creative talents, had transformed her. She was still herself, still kind, still thoughtful, but now she moved with confidence, with purpose. The fear that had haunted her eyes for so long had been replaced with something bright and alive. William watched from the doorway, unable to stop smiling. She'd done this. Built something beautiful from nothing. Santos Events was thriving beyond anyone's expectations, with bookings extending into next year. And Mariana had bloomed like a flower, finally getting the sunlight it needed. Stop staring, she said without looking up. You're distracting my team. Can't help it. You're remarkable when you're in your element. She turned, and the smile she gave him still had the power to stop his breath. Over these months, they'd grown closer in small, careful steps. Coffee dates that turned into dinners. Long walks where they talked about everything. Movie nights in the estate's theater room. Slowly, carefully, she'd let him into her heart, and he'd given her every reason to trust that leap of faith. Last week, he'd kissed her for the first time. A gentle, sweet kiss that had felt like coming home. "How does it look?" she asked, gesturing at the transformation she'd created. "Like magic. Like everything you touch." William crossed to her, taking her hand. This was allowed now, these small touches. Each one still precious, still earned. "You've turned my house into a home again." "Our house," Mariana corrected softly. She'd moved back to the estate 2 months ago, this time not as staff but as William's partner, in business and in life. She occupied her own suite of rooms, setting her own terms, maintaining her independence while allowing herself to be part of something bigger. "If you still want that," she added, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. "I've never wanted anything more." From outside came the sound of the first guests arriving. Mariana took a deep breath, squeezing his hand. "Nervous?" William asked. "Terrified. Excited. Happy." She looked up at him. Those dark eyes that had once held so much fear, now sparkling with joy.
"Thank you, William. For everything."
"For saving my life, yes. But more than that, for helping me believe I deserved to be saved." "You saved me first," he said, pulling her close. "You reminded me what matters. That kindness is strength. That vulnerability is courage. That love, real love, isn't about possession or control. It's about seeing someone and choosing them every day." "Is this you telling me you love me, Mr. Montgomery?" Her tone was teasing, but her eyes were serious. "Yes, Miss Santos. It is. I love you. I've loved you since I carried you out of that snow. Maybe before, if I'm honest." He touched her face gently. No pressure. No expectations. Just the truth. Mariana's smile was radiant. "I love you too. I've been afraid to say it, afraid it would make me too vulnerable. But I'm learning that vulnerability with the right person isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing I can do." They kissed then, soft and sweet, while outside the winter sun set over the estate grounds and guests arrived for a celebration of love. A celebration that Mariana had created, in a home where she was no longer afraid. Later that night, after the wedding had ended and the last guests departed, they sat together in William's study, their study now. Mariana curled beside him on the sofa, his arm around her shoulders, both exhausted but happy. "You know what I was thinking about?" Mariana said softly. That Christmas Eve. How the worst night of my life became the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to me." William pressed a kiss to her hair. "Funny how that works. How sometimes we have to break completely before we can rebuild into something stronger. Do you ever regret it? Throwing away your old life? The society connections, the perfect on-paper fiancé?" "Not for a second. That wasn't my life, it was a role I was playing. This," he gestured around them, but he meant more than the room. "This is real. This is what matters." Mariana tilted her face up to his. "I love you, William Montgomery. I love you, Mariana Santos. My snow angel. My home." Outside, snow began to fall again, gentle flakes drifting past the windows. But this time, the snow looked beautiful instead of threatening. This time, it looked like blessing instead of curse. This time, it looked like home. 1 year later, William proposed to Mariana on Christmas Eve, in the ballroom where her business had launched, surrounded by the household staff who'd become family. Mrs. Chen cried happy tears. The other staff members cheered. And Mariana said yes, not because she needed his wealth or his name, but because she'd learned that true strength wasn't in standing alone. It was in choosing to stand together with someone who saw you, truly saw you, and loved every broken and beautiful piece. Their wedding, 6 months later, was everything Mariana had dreamed of, elegant but warm, formal but filled with love. And when they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Mariana whispered, Thank you for finding me in the snow. Thank you for teaching me how to see, William whispered back. 2 years after that, when their daughter was born on a snowy December night, they named her Esperanza, Hope. Because that's what they'd given each other on that terrible, wonderful Christmas Eve when everything fell apart and came together. The hope of being seen, being loved, and being brave enough to believe in second chances. The hope that even in the coldest, darkest winter, spring will always come again.